Hey friends, Damian Mason coming at you today to discuss the reality of food amid the coronavirus pandemic and what it's going to mean for every person in America who eats. So if you are, like me, involved in the business of agriculture, you can use this and share it around to explain what's really happening, because a lot of our consumers that are definitely at the dinner table but far removed from the farm and food system have a lot of questions. I'm seeing a lot of misinformation. So in this time together, which I'm titling More Than Meets the Eye, I'm going to explain things in terms that everyone can understand. This headline right here, overcrowded barns hamper the pork industry, follows headlines yesterday that meat plants are closing down. Been seeing a lot of questions. Does this mean we're going to have a shortage of food? And then you heard that the Tyson meat CEO put a letter in the New York Times explaining that we have a broken supply chain right now and there will be an impact. Why you should be concerned. You have never probably gone to the grocery and seen bare shelves until the last couple of weeks or months where it was toilet paper. Well, imagine when this happens and it is your groceries. There will be panic buying, there will be unrest, and there will be a lot of people that start to question whether they can feed their family. And a stable society is predicated on a stable food supply. That's one of the great tenets of the United States Department of Agriculture. We've always had abundant, reliable, and safe food in the United States of America. So our time together today, we're going to discuss the food supply chain. And yes, I'm using a paper towel holder. They were also run on just like toilet paper. So it wasn't hard to find an empty paper towel holder around the Mason household. The food supply chain is again, very complex, and there's a lot more moving parts than you probably realize. So you might be seeing in the next week or two that on farms, we are euthanizing animals. And at the same time, over at the other end, there's a grocery store that's limiting how many pork chops you can buy. And you're saying, Damian, I don't get it. Why is it we're destroying pigs and I can't buy meat? It's because in the middle, there's a lot of moving parts. There's the growth, there's the production of livestock, and most importantly, there's the processing of that livestock to make it into an edible product that you can buy and take home and cook or go to a restaurant and eat. At the beginning of the food supply chain, we start with an egg or a baby pig or a calf. And that animal begins its journey through growth, through developing, through being fed, being watered, being nurtured, being medicated if necessary, and also then ultimately coming out the other end of the food supply chain as something that you and I can feed our families, a pork chop, a chicken, a steak. Makes sense, right? So the thing is, this supply chain takes a great deal of time, months, if not years. And so when folks are saying, I understand we're killing pigs on these farms or euthanizing them, and they could be made into pork chops. And I've even seen Cory Booker and these various politicians that have never been on a farm, that have never produced 1 calorie worth of food, lamenting this. So the first question is, why are we euthanizing these animals? Because there is no room for them, is the short answer. These animals require food, water, care, and a hog barn that finishes hogs, meaning it takes them from weaned pigs to ready to be butchered, costs about $1 million or so. Do you know anybody that has $1 million or so modern hog facility hanging around that they can just open up for these spare pigs that can't go through the process? The processing plants are closing because the employees have been infected with coronavirus. It could be from their home life. It could be with how they live. It could be with where they work. We don't know these things completely. All we know is we're shutting down plants, and that puts a crimp on the food supply chain. Right here, we're crimping it. So now those animals over here have nowhere to go, which is going to restrict the output over here of the food that you and I eat. Those animals that are being euthanized cost money and require care. There's the facility issue, and there's the fact that also right behind them is another young pig, another young chicken, another young steer or calf that's coming into the supply. That's why we have such abundant food here in the United States of America and Canada, is because we always have the primer over here. We're always breeding, and then we have the gestation time, and then we have the birth, and then we have the growth, and then we have the ultimate ending unit, which means you can eat this and it's a product for you and your family. Okay, there's the other issue. Why not just hold off for a few weeks? I've been asked that question a number of times. Why don't we just keep those hogs? Well, where do they go? Again, do you have $1 million modern hog facility that's just sitting around empty? Could you build one of those between now and next weekend? Of course you couldn't, because these things take a tremendous amount of time. Can we turn them loose? Well, there's an issue called feral hogs. Can we just let chickens run around? Well, if you've been to Key West or you've been to Kauai, you can say, oh, sure, fine. Well, try and turn some of these numbers loose. I've run some numbers for you. In the United States of America, we harvest 620,000 head of cattle per week, 2.4 million hogs per week. This is a normal week, by the way, not a coronavirus issue. On a normal week, 4.7 million turkeys are harvested each week, 173 million chickens per week, and that all amounts to about 100 billion pounds of meat and poultry that you, me, and the rest of America consume each year. These are huge numbers. Those go through 800 federally inspected plants. If we shut down 5 or 10 of the biggest ones, imagine what that means, because some of the plants don't process and produce very much. You see, it's like if you shut down the biggest General Motors truck factory, and you're saying, yeah, but why don't we have trucks? My neighbor over here in his garage, he still makes 1 truck every month and a half. You understand it's a matter of scale. The entire meat industry is about a $1 trillion industry. I have seen the vegetarian, vegan activists that don't like me, that get on social media and argue with me about my stance as a pro-agricultural person, saying, but why don't we just eat Beyond Burgers? What about Impossible Meats? Here's the issue. In the United States of America, we consume 220 pounds of meat and poultry per year per American. We consume less than half a pound of alternative meats or plant-based protein. So there's not any possible way that meat alternatives could catch up with our protein demand. There's not enough time, and the food supply chain is also not built up enough for that to happen. Another thing you must understand about these alternative proteins: they are made of things like lentils and peas, edible peas and beans and soybean product and beet juice, and they are made in food processing facilities. Guess what? Food processing facilities, which require a tremendous amount of hands on deck, where workers work in close proximity to one another, are going to have the same exact issue with coronavirus risk as the meat plants. Hasn't happened yet, but again, there are not as many facilities doing so. Again, 220 pounds per American per year of meat and poultry, less than half a pound of plant-based protein. There's going to be no chance for that to catch up. You can say, well, you can go without both and just eat vegetables. Have you noticed that we are plowing under vegetables because of the distribution issue, and again, crimps in the food supply chain? Oops, sorry, upside down. So we got a real issue here, and then you're going to say, well, I still want to eat meat. I need protein. What about seafood? We eat about 16 pounds of seafood in the United States of America per American per year. Those pounds are mostly farm-raised and then processed at, you guessed it, food processing meat facilities. Even the stuff that's caught off in the ocean somewhere goes through a meat processing facility, which is going to have the same risk, or maybe even more, of workers being contaminated with the coronavirus. I'm Damian Mason. I talk about issues that impact you and your family and how you eat. I'm the author of Food Fear. If you'd like to pick up a copy, go to DamianMason.com. I'm sharing this so that you can share it with others, so you'll please understand this is not something to be turned on in a snap. The food supply chain is being crimped right now in the middle. We still have the young animals over here that are now being euthanized. Eggs are being broken because why turn them into chickens when there's nowhere for them to go? This is a more complicated issue than many realize. I've given you the answers as to why some of the proposed solutions I'm seeing from suburbanites could not possibly happen. Unless you can come up with $1 million modern hog facility in your backyard between now and tomorrow, there's going to be hogs being euthanized. There's the same thing for poultry. Beef is in a little bit better situation because we can stick cattle out in pastures and whatnot, but even that is going to become an issue because remember, we're normally harvesting 620,000 head of cattle per week. Those facilities being closed means, again, we're backed up and they're over here. There will be some challenges at the grocery store. Your family, you will experience higher prices, and you will even see some barren shelves. The most important thing we can do is open the economy back up. The second most important thing we can do is test vigilantly and put all of our application, our testing that we have toward the food process workers. They are just as important as healthcare workers. They are just as important as police and firemen, because when there is no food, you're going to have a lot more concerns for health and for safety than some folks getting the coronavirus. We should be paying food process workers a hazard pay matched by the federal government. If we can pay $600 to people to be unemployed, we can certainly do better than that to keep our food supply going. Again, I'm Damian Mason. Thanks for tuning in. Please share this with folks. I know it's a little long, but this is, again, a complex issue, but it's an important issue, because you cannot live. Your chance of dying of coronavirus is less than a fraction. It's a less than 1%. It's a fraction of 1%. Your chance of dying if you don't eat is 100%. Thanks for paying attention. I hope this was helpful.